Hello, welcome back to my series on the Hunter-Gatherer's Guide to the 21st Century that I am reading and giving you some of the bingo moments and takeaways and interesting things that I'm learning. Last week I accidentally went into chapter 3 instead of just doing chapter 2. I found chapter 2 a little bit boring. So I wanted to make an amendment to my video from last week because I wasn't sure which group of people I was talking about with the optical illusion. So I had talked about how people from weird countries, Western industrialized I forget what the E is. Anyway, the weird countries, the West, more or less, versus some other group, and I didn't know who they were. So these were the San Bushmen in southern Africa, are the people that they were directly comparing this optical illusion to. So if you want to know what I'm talking about, you can check out that other video. This is chapter 3. And I have my notes, as you can see, as I'm looking back down, because I am struggling. I've read the chapter 3 times, and I'm struggling to really retain the information so that I can present it to you eloquently without having notes. And so I think that having the notes is really important for these videos to be successful and entertaining for you. This chapter is talking about a few different things, and the key one that I wanted to hone in on are adaptations, what makes something an adaptation, why that's important in us considering decisions that we're going to make currently today, and an example of why that is important. So for something to be considered an adaptation, adaptation, according to Brett Weinstein, one of the authors, he came up with this test to see if what you're talking about is in fact an adaptation through the process of evolution. So it's a 3-part test. The questions that you ask are, is the thing you're talking about complex? Does it take a lot of energy to create or maintain or grow? And does it vary between individuals of the same species? And then is it persistent over time? So in that phylogenetic tree, taxonomy, not taxology. That's not a real thing. So does it carry on throughout evolution? So for example, all mammals have mammary glands, more or less. There might be a few, I can't remember if platypuses do or not. Those weird mammals, but something like that. Okay. And so they gave a really great example of human appendix. So in the West, we think of the appendix as what's called a vestigial organ, meaning it's kind of there and doesn't really do anything. And when we first recognized that and we were having health problems with it, doctors would just say, oh, well, that organ doesn't do anything and we can just easily cut it out and it solves the inflammation problem. And if we don't do that and you have an inflamed appendix and it bursts, that's a really serious medical emergency. So the appendix doesn't really do anything, so let's just whack it out. And apparently that was also true of the large intestine. And so they would just come in, cut things out, stitch you back up, and off you go. And it's kind of illogical to think that, well, why would we create this organ that doesn't really do anything? That doesn't make any kind of sense. Maybe the appendix is actually an adaptation. And so they walk through in the chapter the appendix going through these tests. So very quickly, is the appendix complex? Turns out the appendix is made up of immune tissue and not the same tissue that the other organs near it are. And it houses microorganisms. So yes, there's complexity to the human appendix. Does it take energy and does it vary across individuals? Yes, check. So you have to grow an appendix, you have to maintain it. It's consuming the energy of your body. And across different members of the human species, our appendixes are not identical. That's what that means. And does it persist over time? That third test. And yes, appendix has been present in mammals for over 50 million years, according to our records. Okay, Well, it seems odd that we would be like for 50 million years putting time and energy into maintaining this organ that doesn't do anything. And so, just because it's an adaptation, that doesn't mean we know what it does. But there's an interesting new theory as to what the appendix is for and why it's causing us some new problems. So they propose this as a theory, so it's not been, tested a million times and is like 100% true. But they're thinking that the appendix houses microorganisms and immune tissue, so it probably has something to do with fighting off disease. And more research is going into what's called our microbiome, which is all of the bacteria that live in our gut and help to keep us living healthily. So we have this great relationship between our microbiome and the rest of us. And they're thinking that this was really cool. So I'm going to take a little bit of time to really get the idea out. They're thinking that in times of sickness, one of the things that your body does is tries to flush out what's going wrong. So if you've ever had some kind of sickness and you keep running to the toilet, you know what I'm talking about. I'm sure everyone has had that experience. And the theory is that your healthy gut microbiome would kind of retreat into your appendix while your body tries to get rid of whatever bacteria or virus or things that's causing you this sickness. So it's like killing it with fever, and it is like flushing it out, and you're, coming out of both ends, all of that kind of stuff. And once it can get rid of that, your appendix will release that gut microbiome back into your system so that you can kind of reset yourself and become healthy again. That's really, really cool. And so then why are things suddenly going wrong and we're having all of these like appendicitis and our appendix isn't working? Well, it turns out that in areas that are non-weird countries that don't have that kind of influence, they have a much higher rate of diseases that cause diarrhea and a much lower incidence of appendicitis. Is virtually non-existent. And then in the weird countries where we are focused on like highly developed things, we're very, very clean. We don't have all of these sicknesses that are sort of giving us these cycles of diarrhea, purging of the bacteria. Now it's causing problems with our appendix because it doesn't have anything to do. Just a really fascinating thought as to what kind of is going on, which I thought that was really cool. And so they use that as an example of a way you can walk through this test is something in adaptation. And they are leading us down the path to proceed with caution. They call it the precautionary principle, and they use an analogy called Chesterton's fence. And so Chesterton's fence is this story of two individuals are walking in a field or in the woods or somewhere, and they come across a fence, and the fence is blocking their way. And the first person says, oh, this fence, let's look around. This fence isn't doing anything. Let's just get rid of this fence. And then the second person, presumably Chesterton, but who knows, is saying, hold on a second. Can you please explain to me what this fence is for? Well, no, I have no idea. It's just in our way. Well, then I don't think we should remove it until you know exactly what this is for and we can verify that that is no longer needed. Like, we should probably just keep it in place. And it's this kind of philosophy for proceeding with caution with sort of new ideas and changing things, particularly irreversible things. We should not just go full steam ahead into these big changes. And that is kind of the first part of the chapter in a nutshell. And the big takeaway that they actually summarize very nicely in the chapter for me, so I can read it verbatim, but I did put it in my notes, is to be skeptical of novel solutions to ancient problems, especially if they are difficult to reverse. And I think that's a really wise way to move forward into this ever-changing, hyper-fast, like AI is going like crazy and things are really going to start changing fast. I think that's a really good lesson to take a second, see if this problem has been encountered before, what the solutions were, why maybe those worked, and really think about if those apply now or not. And I'm excited because the next chapter talks about medicine. And so we'll be able to see what we're doing currently in medicine versus how they used to, and what approaches we should take with our own health, which I think is very cool. And then I just wanted to read verbatim one more time because it triggered an emotional reaction in me that I want to share and explain with you. So verbatim from the chapter. So this is talking about Chesterton. So Chesterton wrote this, so this is talking about the Chesterton fence, wrote this in the same era where some medical doctors had decided that the large intestine was a waste of space in the human body. What? We know that that's not true. Okay, skipping a little bit. Keep an eye out for other things that we moderns might be trying to rid ourselves of without sufficiently understanding their function. So not only Chesterton's fence, Chesterton's organs, like the appendix, but his gods, his breast milk, his cuisine, and his play. And the one that really hit me was breast milk, because I not just recently, a couple years ago, had a baby, opted to pursue breastfeeding because I felt that was important. And it was a big struggle. I wasn't prepared for how hard it was to establish. Got together with like a group of women to get me through it. And I'm very grateful that I did. But the group of women that I'm with are primarily Americans. And the United States does not have a very supportive breastfeeding environment. They're very formula fed. And we talk a lot about the downstream long-term effects of divorcing breastfeeding from the mother-child relationship. And so the fact that they included that in their passage when talking about, hey, this is like an adaptation that mammals have been using for a really long time, like there might be things other than nourishment that are important, like that just really hit me. And I think that is an important question to ask. And so I will leave it at that for today, and then we will get into chapter 4 for the next video. And I hope that this series is just prickling some interest to, first of all, go check out this book, especially at the library, so that it keeps it in circulation and more people can read it. Very aggressively pro-library. Or if you want to buy it, obviously support the authors as well. Or just start asking questions and getting yourself organized for the days ahead, because they are going to be both thrilling and terrifying and exciting and challenging. So have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.